Gotcha.
You ready to roll?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming along again. I'm Brent. That's Bryce over there. And I've got to scratch my back real fast, be all nice and professional. Don't worry, I'm sure. Anyway, on last week's show, we talked about some various things and kind of ended up talking a little bit about online content and so forth, and how to protect our children. Or not necessarily, we didn't talk about how. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about ways to protect the kiddos from things that we don't want them to watch. And of course, they've got their own ideas there. But and we don't know all the specifics. I'll start that out up front. I didn't make any notes of what to do for Netflix or Hulu or any of those types of things. But there are some general precautions that can be taken.
Yeah. I'm sorry. For those type of things, there's typically not like a step-by-step process for numerous reasons. Number one, it changes.
Well, for
the location.
Yeah, that's the thing that annoys me the most is the change.
Yeah. So we can give it step by step, but that's only for today. Who knows when they're going to make their next change, and then it'll probably say the exact same thing, but be in a different area, or be in the same area but say something slightly different. So generalities are usually best, and for anything like this, it's usually pretty good to kind of just play around with the locations inside your settings of your account, or also known as your account settings, to see what other things you might want to turn on or turn off. In this specific case, it's about, what do they call that online? They call that, like the rating system is what a lot of companies use.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit dodgy because the rating system, it's good on a generic overlay, like a thin layer on top, but it's not granular. There's a lot of shows that I consider fairly violent, but they're PG-13. You think back to the day, I think back when Jaws came out, I don't believe, and I could be incorrect, but I don't believe that there was a rating system in play. But then they created the rating system and it was rated R. If you go find that same DVD or see it online somewhere, it'll probably say PG-13 because the standards have changed. And that's actually my biggest problem, is that the standards keep going down. They allow more cursing. They allow more violence. They allow, more nudity or sex, and or sexual themes, as they call it, I think. And it's sad, but it's the generations. Each generation is getting sadder and sadder. And that's not, I don't think anybody is shocked by seeing that, because that's what's happened over the years. But that's a whole nother conversation. So for me in my house, I use a combination of things. Oversight, first of all. My children aren't allowed to just take a device. Parental oversight. They're not allowed to just simply take, or even babysitter, oversight for that matter, over at their grandparents or over at their friends. They can't just scamper off into a corner with a device. I
haven't taught my kids how to scamper yet, so that helps.
No, well, I think it's adorable, really. They look so adorable when they do that. But when you say media is all-encompassing. Video tends to be the biggest issue, but audio is, music, songs, is a huge thing. It's a huge influence, especially on your teenagers' lives as they form into adulthood. And my son loves music. My daughter likes music, but my son loves music. And I don't want to hold him back on that, because I think music is important and I think it's fantastic. But, and it's a big but, fat bottom girls talking about music, timely because of Bohemian Rhapsody. But a lot of music is terribly inappropriate, very graphic. And again, that, isn't just sexual, but it could be language, could be cursing, which we don't tolerate in our home. There's a respect thing that needs to go on, and a lot of people don't do that nowadays. And there's even violence, encouraging things like this. And again, music I think is important, but within boundaries, within reason. And I don't want to be heavy-handed. Our mother, at least with me, I'm not sure about with you, was a bit heavy-handed at times, and I know how it made me feel, and what my response was. Whether I was right or wrong is a whole other conversation, but
probably wrong,
but still. And again, her intentions were good, so I can't fault that. But maybe I can act a little differently. And so I'm trying to do the same thing with TVs and shows. So the first step is parental oversight, and that goes very, very heavy or hand in hand, or however you want to phrase that, with training. Here's things that you should find inappropriate, that you shouldn't be interested in. And here's the reasons why. Not just saying because I said so, because that just doesn't fly anymore. And it shouldn't, My mother-in-law used to say on a regular basis, reason with them. And I would make fun a little bit because she was saying that when my kids were 6 months old. How do you reason with a 6-month-old? But the point is still the same, especially now when they're early to mid-teens. Reason with them. That way they can come to their own conclusions as to why they're going to be doing what they do. If they don't learn that now, when I am around, there's a pretty huge guarantee they're not going to do that when I'm not around. They're going to default to what they want to do, or what feels good, or what feels right, or what their heart says. And it's one of my...
Wait, you're telling they can't follow? You live in California. They can't follow their heart? Is that what you're telling me?
I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase with a passion. Because people's heart drives them into bad marriages, drives them off of a cliff for suicide, drives them into bad friendship relationships. Again, whole other topic. Anywho, but don't follow your heart down that spiral of Netflix or YouTube. So those are the two, in my opinion, the biggest things, most important things. The most important out of those would be training and then parental oversight, because hopefully this is what they're seeing. This is what I'm hoping they're seeing, is that my oversight, my wife's oversight, is because we care. It's because we want what's best for them. And it's not just because we want to be domineering and whatever else. But with that said, there are some precautions that I've taken behind the scenes. When I let my children use a computer, they are not the administrator of the computer. They currently don't know, well, that I am aware of, they don't know the password to the computer. So I have to log in, or my wife logs in, and they don't know the password to Netflix and to our family shared YouTube account. That's another thing I'm going to get to in a minute. So that is a protection, and it's a protection for them. It's also protection for the computer. I mean, let's be serious. Anybody can go to the wrong website, and I don't mean bad. I just mean wrong. Go to some place that they think is okay, but next thing you know, things are being installed in the background and they're not aware.
Right.
If they're not the administrator, if they don't have the rights to do that, then they can't have things installed, and it helps the computer run faster, last longer, so on and so forth. When it comes to YouTube, I mentioned we have a shared account. Actually, all accounts are shared in the house when it comes to media and software and things like that. It helps kind of stretch the budget a little bit. If I download an app, I can install it on any device because it's the same account. When they get old enough to be on their own, create your own account, run with it. Sorry, you lose all those apps. But that's your problem. But we have a family shared YouTube account. I should say Google account more specifically. That gives us access to email and a calendar that we all share, which is nice. But most importantly, for the YouTube and media side, I have it set to strict something. And I say something because I don't remember. And especially being Google, man alive, does that change regularly. It's actually gotten more strict recently. It went through being, okay, if you set your media access, if you will, to this level, then it kind of dropped. And it's like, ooh, certain things that were shouldn't show up are showing up. Again, not bad, vile things, but things that, where did they come from? But then they got more strict. So now they went a little further. And so there are times where we watch, as a family, a YouTube channel, and we watch episode after episode, 5, 10, 20-minute episodes. And then, I don't know, or one of them is blocked. What? Because of content, because of the restrictions. What in the world? So I look it up real quick on my phone. And by the way, my personal Gmail account is tied with the family's. So mine is restricted as well, but I know the password so I can sign in and out. The kids don't know the password, so they can't sign out. So I'll sign out. I'll look at that video. That's why is that restricted? And again, Google has some weird stuff. So maybe the word suicide was mentioned once. Maybe they talked about drugs or death for a few seconds, and that's enough to trip that restriction process. So then I'll airplay
computers and algorithms making those decisions, not people behind the scenes.
Exactly. They're not going in. The channel people aren't going in and ticking certain boxes. It's the computer taking over.
AI, the big term these days.
Yep. It's the beginning of the what's it called? So that's one thing. Again, same idea with Netflix and all that jazz. They have their own little sub accounts, but they're considered children at their various ages. They're not allowed to, per the account, log into other things, and they're not supposed to use these things when we're not around. Not supposed to. So, but it does keep track. They don't have a device. I don't believe, and I could be incorrect, like if you watch a show on Netflix, as an example, you can log into your account and delete it from your history. You cannot do that from the Apple TV interface, which is where we tend to watch Netflix most of the time. And I don't believe you can watch it from the Netflix app on tablets or phones. Again, I could be incorrect. I've looked. I've tried to find it just to make sure that my kids can't, circumvent anything. And again, not that they've tried, but I work for a school district and I know how kids are constantly trying to get around these things. So my kids I feel sorry for them to some degree because I'm always like right there on the edge going, okay, what are you crazy kids trying to do? Because of a story of, at one of the schools or something. But that's probably the third thing is share the accounts and make sure that they're on a level to where, to some degree, I agree with. There are certain things that show up on the featured or recommended list, and fairly innocuous stuff. Nothing probably worse than you'd see at a beach somewhere. We live in California. Beaches are prevalent, beaches and pools for that matter. But again, language is what slips in there the most, especially my son's into the sports YouTube shows and people are talking like us, but about stuff that other people are willing to listen to. And the more casual ones, will they talk more casual as well. So the verbiage is a little more loose. So those are the main things that I do. Another thing I do is as a just-in-caser. I don't remember the name of it, but I have my DNS on my router set to a family-friendly DNS. And what that means is DNS is domain name system. When you go to yahoo.com, Yahoo is not Yahoo. Yahoo is actually 72.72.72.72. And I'm just making up a number. That's actually not what it is. But it's 4 quadrants, 4 octets. And instead of everyone having to remember these things, they've allowed you to associate a name with it. And the DNS servers throughout the world keep a record of all those. And there are family-friendly DNS servers that say, oh, this name that's associated with this address is a bit on the dodgy side. I'm sorry, we're not going to let you see it. And the one I'm specifically using, I don't know how they do this, but on the back end, they associate it with some things that Google has, some services, free services that Google has for family protection. So it's kind of like the next level DNS. You have DNS that does its normal job. You have DNS that restricts you a little bit, and this one kind of goes just one step, but it's free. I just plug in the number. I'm sure they're pulling some sort of metrics out of it saying, from this IP address, this family constantly goes to these sites. I'm sure they're doing that a little bit for ad revenue or whatever in the background. But
and you do that on your router, correct?
That's on the router itself.
You
can do it on the computer, but why did I not?
Do it on every computer? So
you have to do it on every computer. Yep.
The router gets it once and covers everybody inside, including the phones that connect and all that mess.
I actually wanted it to be on the computers because if it's on the computer, then you can actually force a few other things. But with Windows 10, restricted or removed a few of those features.
Windows 10 is a pain in the...
And so it's become a little more of a pain. Like, for instance, if I want to allow my son to take a computer with him to a friend's house, but I don't want him to connect to their Wi-Fi, even as a user, they have rights to connect to Wi-Fi. You can't disable that. At least I haven't found it yet. And I've looked online. I've researched. People are like, oh, you can do this and this. I tried it. So I can still get in. And maybe it's because I know exactly what I'm doing. So maybe I'm like my own worst enemy on some of these searches, but it's frustrating. So anyways, that's the bulk of what I'm doing. To recap, the most important is teach the kids. Train them calmly and respectfully.
Oof.
And hopefully that they...
asking for a lot there.
That is difficult. But hopefully that's doing something. Oversight and let them know why you're being there or why you're forcing them to be with you while they're doing certain things. Share accounts or in some way, shape, or form, try to get their accounts to be, within a restricted mode. And then the added level on top of everything, the fondant icing, it's my favorite kind of icing, over the top of everything is my DNS settings on the router. Now that doesn't help, like for instance, my son as an example on his phone when he's not home, right? If he turns off Wi-Fi on his phone, which you cannot disable.
Prevent. Right.
At least on an iPhone. He has a personal hotspot. So he could technically connect the laptop to his phone via personal hotspot. That's another reason why I want it on the machine, not on the router. You can't turn off the personal hotspot either. So that's a frustration.
Let me ask you a question there. Something that I have not tested that's coming to mind now. Maybe it came to mind before also, but maybe you've tested it in doing what you're saying there. So like you're mentioning, they can do personal hotspot. With an Apple device, you can go into restrictions and restrict on the device to not allow, the term is, I believe, limit adult content. Or you can have it just block altogether everything and only whitelist certain websites. So those are a range. I typically do limit adult content and call that sufficient because it does for them. I don't believe they're out there digging through the internet just searching, what are the openings to these places where we would like them not to go.
Yeah.
But if you have that set, I'm asking you this, if you've come across it, if you tried it, if that's set, does that then apply next to something attached via the hotspot?
That is an excellent question, and I don't know the answer to that.
I'm thinking it's not, but I don't know the answer either.
Yeah, my first reply is no, because if I understand the policies into the phone correctly, what you're restricting are apps within the phone, not necessarily it being a conduit. But it is something I have not tested, so I'm not 100% sure on that. For some reason, I think I read something somewhere that said that it is not that widespread. It doesn't cover everything, including personal hotspottage. But again, it could be incorrect. If you have a device that you think you maybe test it and get back to us, I can always grab my son's phone, and because my daughter doesn't have a phone at the moment, so I can grab my son's phone and test it. But but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I do congratulate you though. That is a very good question. So what do you do? Do you do anything at your house or at your abode?
A mixture. of some of those things. I was going to say the DNS thing. What I used to do regarding that, and I say used to because I changed out the modem and then the router. I ended up putting the old router back, and then I forgot to do this next step, which is with Netgear routers, and there may be other things for other routers that are similar. I don't know. There is, I believe they call it Netgear Genie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
With that, you create an account, and it effectively acts like that DNS. It routes all traffic, and then it makes sure that you go in and you check boxes of things that you do not want allowed. Adult content, gambling sites, whatever the other list of things may be, chat sites, whatever. So there's a whole slew of things. There's just general shopping. There's streaming television networks. So it tries to cover all of the options. So I went through and I checked all the things that I thought applied, and even to the extent of a little too strong, whatever the term would be, and then backed it off when I noticed it was just kind of hammering all of us in the house, preventing all of us from getting to just typical sites that we might go to. For instance, Flickr. I don't go to Flickr anymore, but I used to back up some of my photos there and whatnot until did they ever go to Verizon? I think somebody else owns them now, but they went to Verizon, I believe.
I can't remember who they went to, but yeah, and then they changed it again here recently. So,
well, now they're owned by not Photo Bucket, but maybe it is some. I wouldn't have a problem being involved with them now. They're involved with some
Shutterfly or something like that.
No, we're on the same track, but I don't think it's either the ones we said. Okay. But either the way, like I said. So there's those types of things at the router level that you could do.
Now, is that free?
Also, yes, that is free. Now, the next thing I was about to mention is if you have the Eero, because I used to have the Eero installed, and the Eero is good if you have actual bandwidth that you can share, but 5 megabits at best. Yeah. The Eero kind of struggled with allowing everybody to share that. But with that, you can pay $100 a year and get additional protections. Very similar to that Netgear Genie, but you'd also get 1Password. Or is that it? 1Pass? Maybe it's LastPass. I don't remember which one it is, but that's included. And normally that's $100 a year by itself. So that basically covers that. And then a few other things. I do not recall what they are, but it comes with a level of protection that you can, and you can do it on the Roku. You can do it, on the, what was I talking about? The Eero. You can do it device specific. So if all of the devices that my sons, I have one son, what did I say sons? My son uses and my daughter uses, I can block whatever I want for those, but leave not affect my in-laws or not affect guests that jump online or whatever. So I used to do those things, but I don't anymore. I am on iOS devices, for instance. They're set up as screen time is set up on those. We had an episode not too long ago discussing screen time. And with screen time, I restrict them solely to 3 hours a day on various apps. Anything web-related is kind of back to that limit adult content. So setting, they have it may or may not be called that on screen time, but it is something similar. So I have that set. As far as their computers, they are set as just general users on their computers, but I also use the Microsoft account because they're Windows computers. And with the Microsoft account, I can log in as a family head or whatever it's called, and then I can see their devices, their computers, their Windows devices. And I can see how long they've been online, what sites they've been to, all those types of things. So that's nice. But then I can also restrict. I can restrict by the app. If I don't want them getting on Minecraft, which I don't play anymore, but I'm just using it as an example, I can block Minecraft. I can block Firefox if I don't want them heading over and using Firefox. And just pigeonhole them, which is not the right term, but point them to Internet Explorer if I want them to. I don't know why. I don't hate my kids, so I wouldn't force them that way. But
does it force you to use Edge and not Internet Explorer?
No, it doesn't. It would prefer for the content protection for them to use Edge or Internet Explorer, one of the two. It does prefer Edge for Windows 10 devices, which they all are now. But so anyway, there's that. And an additional protection, we have an Xbox One S, and I just leave it always set at 0 time, which that way it prevents them from just any day, all day getting on there when we're not home and just playing games all day. So they have to always request, and then I can at that point say all day, 8 hours, 2 hours, 15 minutes, whatever I choose.
That's kind of a cool system. It's very similar to the family plan situation on the iPhone when it works. So you said you got yours working. I could never get mine working, but
the screen time through the family plan.
Screen time.
Yeah, and the Windows has been working that way for years. Right. They have made some changes. They've taken away all these companies, like you said at the beginning. They make changes, and once you think you get something set, and you can just leave it. You don't have to mess with it. They go and change something, and you have to go back and look at it. But that's aggravating. But as far as other things, like in YouTube, we don't have a shared account. I did when they were younger, force them to. I would have my own login. I've got multiple Gmail accounts like a lot of people, and I would have a specific Gmail account that wasn't mine so that they couldn't, if they ever figured out how to jump over to my email or whatever. But it was one in my name, and then I can restrict that down to whatever level I wanted them at. And also, like you mentioned, see the content that they were looking at within YouTube. YouTube is always a back and forth with us. Sometimes I shut it down altogether. I don't ever open it wide up, but I was going to say the biggest. It's not really the biggest, I suppose, but like Netflix, a lot of these things that we just mentioned won't work for Netflix. Just as an example, same thing with Hulu, ABC All Access, or whatever it's called, all of those various things. So within those, they have their own protections, and we don't really have time at this point to get into all of them. But for instance, Netflix, what we did on our side, we just set it as nobody can watch anything worse than PG-13. And I believe I even have checked on unrated things, because unrated things can be worse than rated R many times. And if you want to watch any of that stuff for some reason, or if there's a documentary or whatever that happens to be unrated or whatever, you have to know the PIN code. They don't know the PIN code. So there's that protection there. Like you mentioned, a lot of PG-13 are the equivalent of rated R not too long ago. But the vast majority of a lot of things are PG-13 nowadays, just because of what a term I use is aggression. There's a lot of kind of aggressive sounding movies and TV shows nowadays that aggressive. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's not the right word, but there's not a ton of violence. There's no nudity or anything like that, or no foul language to the extent of what would push it over to an R. But just that constant. I'm going to use the same word again because I can't think of anything else. Aggression.
Regression?
But, no, not regression. That's going backwards. Aggression. Aggressive. Being aggressive. Just that in-your-face type stuff. Okay. But that's what I read somewhere, that's why they were rating these as they were, TV-13 or TV-14 or PG-13, because of the attitude displayed across the course of the show or movie anyway. But you have to always check these things because they're going to make changes. Even if you did a Netgear Genie thing, Netgear just has to make one little change that slips through, and then next thing you know, your kids might be looking at something. If you've fallen back and not done a lot of the things that you mentioned at first, which is that training part, because that training follows them past when you're not there. We are running at 29 minutes plus here, so.
All right. Sounds good. Train your kids, people. Train them kindly.
Be an active
and respectful
part of their life.
All right. Until next time, you'll see us later.
You sure will.
See what I did there?
No, good. I didn't. I missed it. Maybe hopefully they saw it.
Bye.
Bye.
Leaving. I'm out.
Bye. Goodbye.
Ciao.
See you.
See you guys.